So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's fantastic to have you here this afternoon. You'll notice straight away that I'm not outdoors today and that I'm actually in my workshop. The reason for this is something cropped up in the week that I thought I could help address. And before we do that, I've got a couple of very quick questions for you. Okay, so the first question I've got for you today is how many of you have seen knife reviews or sharpening tutorials on YouTube? And at the end of the video, you've seen somebody do this with a knife. Pretty much all of us, right? So then for my second question, how many of you have spent a lot of money on things like whetstones, even DC4 for example, a set of Japanese whetstones, or even one of these expensive sharpening systems, only to find that when you get to the end of sharpening your knife for the first time, that it's actually more dull than when you start? Now, you'd be surprised to hear you wouldn't be on your own, and you wouldn't be the first. So today, hopefully, what I'm going to do is show you how to make something in your shed that might help you with that problem. Okay then, so for the big reveal, today what I'm going to show you how to do is I'm going to show you how to make a leather strop. And for those of you that don't know, stropping is a great way of either finishing a sharpening process or, more importantly, it's a great way of maintaining the edge on your knives. So after light use, if you've been out for the weekend or you've been out for a hike and you want to just put that edge back onto a knife, you literally take your knife and you strop it on your strop. And that helps keep a mirror finish, a nice polish on the edge of the blade, but it also helps keep that blade razor sharp. And what you find is with regular maintenance and regular stropping, you won't actually have to sharpen your knives quite so much. So I think at this point in time, I just want to take a minute to tell you that this video today isn't about how you sharpen a knife. It's quite literally how you're going to make a strop and how you can use that strop to maintain the edge on a knife that isn't too dull without the need for sharpening it all the time. You can use stropping as part of the sharpening process, and you actually use it at the very end to remove a burr, to put a nice mirror finish on your blade. If you keep your blade and it's not too dull and you keep your blade well, you'll be able to strop it and just keep that edge on it. However, with heavy use, if you damage the edge of your blade, you are going to need to think about sharpening that knife, or in some cases you may even have to reprofile the knife. Okay, so today to make our stropping board, all you're going to need is a piece of flat wood. I'm going to be using a piece of 3/4 inch ply. You need some leather. This is leather from an old armchair. Now, it doesn't need to be tool leather, it can be any kind of leather. You can use leather from a handbag, from a coat, or what I do is if I see people throwing away old leather sofas, I'll usually go and ask them if I can strip the leather off and I keep that. And the last thing you're going to need is something to stick your leather to your board. You can use glue, I've used epoxy, you can use Gorilla Glue, but what I really like is I like this extra strong double-sided sticky tape. This isn't the padded stuff, this is just the very, very thin film stuff. You don't want to use the padded stuff because it curls back over the knife and it would have the effect of dulling the edge, not sharpening it. Okay, now when I make my strops, I like to try and have a handle on them. They don't have to have a handle, you can just make something either square or rectangular. I like a handle on them, it just makes them easier to hold. I've measured out using a pencil, 2 inch wide by 6 inches long, and then a handle is about another 4 inches, and I've just made a little bit of a fancy design on the end here. So I'm just going to draw this out using a Sharpie. And then what I will do is cut this out. Okay. I'm not too worried about the fact that my edges aren't particularly straight. I have a belt sander and a disc sander that I can actually, bench sander that I can actually finish these on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these out using a jigsaw first, and then I'm going to take them over to the belt sander and I shall round off the handle edges just to make it comfortable to hold, and then I'll come back. Okay, so here's the cutout shape. As I said, I've sanded off the edges of the handle just to make it comfortable to hold, and I've straightened out the edges and just finished them to stop any chips or splinters. Now what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to take our leather, and I've got a roll of leather here, and quite literally what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this on top of the leather, and then using a knife, and I am going to trace around the edge of leather. This. I'm not overly concerned that it's not perfect. So that's the side that I'm going to use. And what I'm going to do as well is I am just going to mark again with my Sharpie. I'm just going to mark a fancy edge, just to make this look a little bit special. Before anybody asks, the reason why I haven't actually shown you all of the sanding and the cutting out, I am using a gecko pod with my iPhone XR, and when I tried to make this video last night, it was literally like a public service video for what to do in an earthquake. So there we go. Trim that off nicely. That's exactly the kind of look I want. What I like to do before I stick this down is I just get a wire brush and I just run a wire brush over the back of the leather. All I'm looking to do is, this is quite shiny, I'm just looking to rough it up a little bit so that I get better adhesion when I stick this to the board. Now you can use glue, you can use Gorilla Glue, you can use epoxy resin. However, what I've seen is one of the people that I saw make these, I saw them make it with double-sided sticky tape. Now this is the double-sided sticky tape that isn't padded. This is just a flat film tape. You don't want to use the padded stuff, and the reason for that is as you're stropping, the edges will come over, and you'll actually, instead of stropping against the edge, you'll start to strop the edge off, and that's not what you're trying to do. So start off, and we'll put the first piece of tape on and just trim it off. And then my second piece of tape, and make sure you buff it up. You don't want any gaps if you can help it. Buff my second piece up against my first piece. Okay. As you can see, this tape is very, very sticky, so I'm not going to have any problems with this. Okay, make sure your tape's on nice and sound, and peel off the backing. Easier said than done. And you can do this, use a sharp knife, just try and get it under that backing and lift it. So there we have it. And just lift that backing off there, and the same again. Lift that backing off there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my leather. I would like it to sit. Stretch it out a little bit. You don't have to overstretch it, but stretch it out a bit. And once you've stretched it out and you've stuck it down with a good press, what I like to do is just grab another piece of wood. Just a small piece of wood, and I just literally rub that piece of wood over the top. It just helps me to get a good firm stick. And once you've done that, flip it over, trim off your excess. So the excess pieces of tape, let's get rid of those. And these two. Bear in mind that this is double-sided tape, and it's not one of the easiest of things to trim off. Okay. So I have a little bit of overhang on the back of this. I'm going to try and take it off with a knife. that. A little bit at the edge here. And just a tiny bit here also. This is actually one of my favourite knives. It's an old hacking knife that my father gave me. I re-beveled it and put a very sharp edge on it, and literally all I do with this is I strop it. I never sharpen it. Let's put that out of the way. And so there you have it. So okay folks, there you have it. Less than 15 minutes, you've made yourself a strop. Now, as I've said before, what we're going to do is we're going to use the knife that I've actually used to make the strop to show you how to strop. So you've got your strop. What you will need is you'll need some buffing compound. Now this has tiny little grits in it that's suspended in wax, and you need to load up the leather on your strop with the wax and the buffing compound. See, quite a lot on there. And then what you're going to do is you take your knife, hold it very, very firmly. Now you're not pressing down, you're just going lightly, so firm over the strop. And I like to do 8 strops away, and then once I've done 8 away, I'll do 8 coming back towards me. Now you can see why I like to have a handle. On my strops. What you can do as well is you can then, when you're finished, you first start stropping, you can actually then take the knife and just find a light source and glint the knife in the edge of the light source. If you can see anything glinting back at you at all, that would indicate that there's a flat spot on that knife. You may be able to get that out with a little bit more stropping, or you may need to sharpen. That's the decision you'll have to make at this point. On this knife, however, there's no flat spots, and it is actually razor sharp. So I guess really there's only one way to end a video like this, and it's pretty much going to be the same way as I started. I've stropped my knife, I've got my piece of paper, and I think you'll agree I can make bedding for my hand. So there you have it folks. Hopefully you find that useful, and it means that you may be able to maintain your knives without actually spending hours and hours and hours at the whetstones or any other method of sharpening. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, like and subscribe to the channel below. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave those in the comments, and I'll come back to you as soon as possible. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here today. Take care, and remember, live, love, life.